Hello and welcome to another episode of the 546 Project. Nathan here, and I'm without a couple of people. No Dan, no Kevin, no Jason, but I'm not alone on this one. I actually brought over someone that is a friend of the program. He follows us on Twitter, and I believe he follows us on Facebook. Please welcome Matt to the program. Matt?
Hi guys, I'm Matt.
And this is going to be a little different from the normal episodes that we do. It's going to actually be dedicated to one particular subject. And we're both big into fantasy football, so we're going to have our fantasy football preview. Now, whether you play in a standard league, one that does points per reception, 8-team, 10-team, 12-team, 14, 16, whatever little nuances you have in your league, we're going to go over like a little bit of everything. I'm going to go through all the positions and give our undervalued and overvalued at the main positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. So we're going to just have a little fun here. What do you think about that, Matt?
Sounds good. Hope we can give you guys some good advice.
So Matt, you want to just start with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, that sounds good. There's a lot to talk about.
So the first thing I want to bring up, why not start with the guy who many think is going to be number one, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers was the number one quarterback last year, going into the preseason, and about what was it, 7 or 8 weeks? It was against Minnesota. I remember that. Broke his collarbone and was out for most of the whole season, screwing up everybody's draft that drafted Rodgers. Luckily, you and I weren't those two that did, but those that did, they were in a lot of trouble for most of the season.
Yeah, that really hurt the Packers when they lost Aaron Rodgers. You can break it down any way, but he's their whole offense. He makes that offense go. Yes,
he's definitely the guy, and it hurt. It hurt them, and it hurt a lot of fantasy teams. He came back in week 15, and he put up some decent numbers, and then he was out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it really affected the whole offense, especially with Jordy Nelson. Without Aaron Rodgers there, Jordy Nelson was kind of not relevant in fantasy football last year.
And I get the feeling that we're going to reference the fantasy league we're in a lot in this, because the guy that actually drafted Aaron Rodgers managed to win the championship, which was crazy.
That was quite impressive.
Yeah, he actually had Case Keenum as his backup, so it worked out for him in the end.
It definitely did.
So, with Rodgers in mind, my question to you is, do you think he's the number one quarterback? Is there anybody else that you would think garners any consideration as the number one?
Well, when we break down the quarterbacks, I view in tiers. In tier one, you have Rodgers and Brady.
Okay.
Now, when you break Rodgers and Brady down, I think Rodgers has better weapons. Brady has Gronkowski. Rodgers has Graham. Okay,
and he's got Devontae Adams too.
Right, you can give Brady the edge in the tight end position, but with Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams is better than any receiver Tom Brady has.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you think Randall Cobb would be better than any receiver that they have? The Patriots?
Randall Cobb is a tough position because you have him. He's been there for a long time, but hasn't really produced in the past 4 years. Maybe injuries, maybe Jordy Nelson, maybe getting running backs more involved in Green Bay. But compare Randall Cobb to any other Patriot receivers, I'm going to say no, even with Julian Edelman being suspended. But Aaron Rodgers is younger, has a stronger arm than Tom Brady. That's why I put him number one.
Okay.
In my rankings.
All right, yeah. I also think Rodgers is number one overall in the quarterbacks, so we do agree there. Do you think Brady's the second? Is there anybody else that would kind of challenge him in that regard?
without a shadow of a doubt, like I know he's been called the GOAT. That can be up for debate at later podcasts, but he does it year in year out. You know that team is going to win a lot of games and has a good chance of making a Super Bowl and possibly winning a Super Bowl. The offense revolves around Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's definitely at least in the conversation with as the number 2 quarterback this year. A lot of people would say Rodgers and Brady in that order.
I think when you view Tom Brady, you can go back to his first year when, maybe first or second year when, I forget when they beat the Rams. He really didn't have much around him. Maybe his best receiver was Deion Branch, and still put up decent numbers. But as time went on, his best weapon he's gotten is Randy Moss. Even Randy Moss is better than Gronkowski, put up better fantasy numbers. But, you know, he does it year in, year out. It might be a credit to the system, but Tom Brady is a master surgeon, especially in that offense.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who he has there, as you probably said. They perform. They actually perform better because of Tom Brady.
I agree with that. The whole team revolves around Tom Brady.
I mean, they throw all these scrubs that nobody else wants, and all of a sudden they're at least passable.
Right. You can even go a couple years ago with Danny Woodhead. He came out of nowhere with Tom Brady.
I mean, Deion Lewis last year.
Sure.
He was more involved in the running game, but he caught a lot of passes in the backfield, so that's part of it.
That's right.
Brady would be number 2. Going back to Rodgers, he's last year there were a ton of injuries, I thought, and among all the positions, but quarterback was hurt pretty good. If you include Rodgers, a couple other guys that I remember that stick out. Carson Wentz, he was one that had a pretty good season. Like, he was up there in the top 5, and then he tore his ACL, and then whoever had him at the end of the year kind of just went downhill.
You know, that's amazing how the Eagles went to the Super Bowl and beat the Patriots without Carson Wentz. They plug in Nick Foles. They use more RPOs and their schemes. But Carson Wentz was clearly the MVP last year heading up to the week he got injured.
So there's been talk about with Wentz that he may not even make it starting week 1. Do you think he is in real danger of not starting in week 1?
You have to be careful with Wentz and with that kind of injury. But as they've shown, they have a capable backup in Nick Foles. So I think you can rest Wentz for maybe a 1 to 3 week period of time and be okay with Foles and still survive.
Well, if you go about the game last night against Cleveland, which all accounts were that Foles did not do well, but at the same time, the Eagles didn't really play a lot of their starters, but it kind of crept up to them, in my opinion, that they may want to get Wentz ready as soon as possible. Now, I think they could do okay without Wentz for 2 games. But after that, I think now he started to work in a little bit more, and I think the goal is for them to get him ready for week 1. And that, whether he plays or not at this point, is uncertain.
I would agree with that. Like I said, if Foles can play to his strengths and use the RPO play calls, they could be fine. They could win 1 or 2 games. It would last a whole season with Foles, or even half the season with Foles. There's some question marks about that.
And you don't really have... you think Wentz is going to return to the form that he had for most of the year last year, as far as numbers and all that?
I think with passing, with running, that might be a different story, because was it his ACL he blew out last year?
Yeah, he tore his ACL.
That could be a more than 1 year recovery, but we'll see how he responds, how he takes hits, and everything.
Yeah, sure. It's never a guarantee with an injury that bad ACL injuries. I mean, nowadays that like usually it takes like 9 months or so for someone to recover from a ACL injury like that. But back in the day, it was like it could have been career threatening. So the marvels of modern science are the people like Carson Wentz can thank the doctors and all that for allowing them to continue their careers after such an injury like that.
That's a fact. The modern marvels of medicine and technology.
And another guy that suffered a torn ACL, it didn't happen for him in a game. It happened for him in a practice. This guy, he was on his way to being the number one he was actually the number one quarterback through the first 6 or 7 weeks, and that was Deshaun Watson of the Texans. So he's back. He's ready to go in all accounts, and he will be their week 1 starter. My question to you, Matt, is do you think that he'll also replicate his success from last year and do it for a full season?
I would like to think so, but I have more caution with Watson than Wentz. Because last year, Deshaun Watson, that was his first year in the league. And Wentz has been around a little longer, maybe a year or two more. So I think he can come back. But as a pure passer, Wentz is better than Watson. I'm just a little worried that, teams will catch on to the Deshaun Watson types. He definitely is better than the RG3 and stuff, more accurate, makes better decisions. But we'll see what Deshaun Watson brings to the table this year.
Well, a thing about Deshaun Watson's game, part of it is mobility. And part of it he does bring that running aspect, especially in terms of fantasy numbers. So, it may hurt him in that, at least for the beginning. He may be a little tentative. A lot of, I wouldn't think of anybody wouldn't be at least a little tentative, considering they had that big of an injury. But for him to be that high up in his rookie year, it was kind of an anomaly, I think.
Sure.
Just because I don't think this year he would go up to a number 1 or number 2 best quarterback in the NFL as far as fantasy is concerned. Where would you put him? Just as your best guess.
Well, with Deshaun Watson, I would put him in that second tier, because in that first tier you have Brady and Rodgers. Mm-hmm. We both like Rodgers better than Brady, but then you get down to the Drew Brees. Mm-hmm. I think you can put Stafford could be in that discussion as well, and Rivers is always consistent. But then, if I had to choose between Deshaun Watson and a Kirk Cousins, I would roll the dice on Deshaun Watson.
You'd rather have Watson over Cousins.
So I think you can put Deshaun Watson in that tier.
So basically, you would put him at about the 6th best, 7th best, something like that.
I would say that's fair. Okay. Just slightly above Jared Goff.
Jared Goff, okay. Yeah. We'll probably get to him a little bit later, but there's another guy who is coming back from an injury. A guy you were actually very familiar with and actually rolled the dice on last year, and he let you down. He let me down too, because I picked him as a backup in another league that I had, Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, they thought he was going to be out for the first 6 games of the season, and the Colts would just never fully give you the full story on Luck, and he missed the whole year. So now, the shoulder's been rebuilt and rebuilt again and all that, and he finally actually threw a regulation football here recently, and he has played in some preseason action. Against Seattle, he was not bad. He wasn't great, but he didn't get hurt. And that's the big thing about having Luck there. Now, against the Ravens, he didn't do as good. But again, didn't get hurt.
Andrew Luck. Where do I start? Well, I kept him last year in the league Nathan and I currently play in. He has all the potential in the world. When healthy, he can be a top 3 fantasy quarterback, without a shadow of a doubt. I blame more the Colts organization than Andrew Luck because they failed to surround him with good weapons, a running game, even a defense. The man's expected to carry so much weight on his shoulder, I think more than any other quarterback, including Rodgers and Brady, in the league. His best weapon is T.Y. Hilton. Hilton's a good receiver, but T.Y. Hilton is known best for his speed and his deep routes. Luck, a couple years ago, he threw 50 touchdowns. Amazing, with no one on his team. But once Andrew Luck goes down, the Colts are probably the second or worst team in football.
Yeah, their offense clearly struggled without Luck. Now, Luck, I don't know if he'll get back to his form before his injury. It's hard to say. Andrew Luck could finish the 25th best quarterback, or he could finish in the top 5. That's just so odd. And depending on who you ask, like any experts that you would ask, they rank him. They're either high on him and they think he's going to have a comeback, or it's just that shoulder's not going to hold up.
Speaking as a previous owner, Andrew Luck, he would be a late round draft pick as your quarterback number 2.
So let's put this in terms of a 12-team league. A lot of people do play in 12s.
Sure.
Okay. So you think he falls outside of the top 12?
That is a fact.
Okay. All right.
But with Andrew Luck, you're banking on some form of resemblance to what he was a couple years ago. But it's hard to... I would take him because the risk is low right now and the reward could be so great if that team resembles anything of a National League football team this year.
Well, with Luck, I don't know how good his weapons are now. Because he has Hilton, as you said, and he's when he and Luck are together, it's very good. Now he has Jack Doyle as his main tight end, and Doyle had a really good year last year because all they did, what all Jacoby Brissett seemed to do, was dump it off to Doyle, and he had a phenomenal year as far as catching was concerned. Now they have Eric Ebron as well, and I'm not a big fan of Eric Ebron.
Who is, guys? Who is?
With Eric Ebron, I mean, he was in the NFL draft. He was like he was drafted like in the top 6 or 7 or something like that when he went to Detroit. And you thought he would be just this great tight end, and he would just disappoint like almost all the time. There were weeks when he did really well, individual weeks, but as a season as a whole, he didn't perform like a top 10 guy, you know?
Guys, let's don't kid ourselves. If you don't get the Gronk, Rob Gronkowski, or Zach Ertz, or Kelsey, or Graham or Olsen, you can wait on a tight end.
Yeah.
And there's Eric Ebron, if you're that desperate, pick him for your last pick of the draft, even after a defense.
Well, it's not bad advice if you want a guy like Ebron, but again, he is the second tight end for the Colts, so if that warrants anything, you're really reaching for tight ends. But we'll get to tight ends later on in the program. Let's go back. Yeah. Let's go back to quarterbacks.
Okay.
And actually, I want to move on to an abundant rookie class of quarterbacks that we have this year. Now, they may not be abundant in talent, but they're abundant in numbers. And I'm talking about Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, and Lamar Jackson. So I feel like all of these guys are really close as far as ranking is concerned. Now, of those 5 guys, who do you like the best?
The one that sticks out to me during preseason is Sam Darnold. If I had to say during the draft, the NFL rookie draft, I would say Josh Rosen. What Darnold showed me in preseason with the Jets, with lesser weapons than Josh Rosen has with the Cardinals, even though Rosen's not the starter, Darnold, you can get by with Darnold. He can win you some games, or at least help your team out. Maybe 10 points a game, guys.
Yeah, depending on what your league setup is, whether it's like you get a point per 25 yards you pass for, if you take off for interceptions. I mean, rookies aren't gonna like light up the world as far as ball control. I mean, they're gonna make mistakes, and Darnold probably isn't going to be immune to any mistakes.
No.
In that line. So you like Darnold the best. So as far as a total ranking among quarterbacks, where would you put him? Like, is he in line for like quarterback 2 consideration, or do you think he's just kind of a flyer that you'd want to add like as far as a waiver wire and just kind of?
I think Darnold's an RB2.
You mean QB2?
QB2, guys. Right. I think he has the potential this year to be better than Blake Bortles. Okay. With Blake Bortles, you know what you're going to get. He'll have a good week here and there, but you know those picks are coming, guys, and those turnovers are coming. I think Darnold will surprise a lot of people this year.
See, I'm going to disagree actually with that. I don't think, and this is generally any rookie quarterback. Darnold has the opportunity because it's looking more and more like he's going to be the starter for week 1. But you have to temper any enjoyment because it is the Jets, and the Jets don't really have any really good weapons with him. I mean, Robbie Anderson's probably the best guy he can throw to on the team.
Sure. A questionable wide receiver 2 at best.
Yeah, that's very, very questionable.
And that's being nice to Robbie Anderson. No offense to Robbie Anderson.
Yeah. Well, Robbie Anderson's been afoul of the law, and he was like in line to be suspended for like a game or 2, but that did not happen.
No.
So good for Robbie Anderson, and good for anybody that may want to draft him, of course.
Sure.
So I don't, of any of these rookie quarterbacks, it's just so tough because the opportunities, you don't know if they're going to present themselves. If I had to pick one, and I had to pick one just based on the availability of what is in front of them, I'm going to pick Josh Allen from Buffalo. Just because I think there's no other quarterback that's on the roster that kind of would challenge him. I mean, they have Nathan Peterman, who, if you remember last year, the San Diego game where he threw those 5 interceptions and he got taken out.
That was ugly.
Yeah, that was really bad. And then you have A.J. McCarron, who they thought broke his collarbone, but actually didn't. But neither of those 2 names scream starting quarterback in week 1. If they can get away with starting Allen, I think they will. If I had to rank them in order, going from 1 to 5, just based on the rookie quarterbacks, I don't think any of these guys would probably be in the QB2 conversation for the whole year. Maybe like some point of a waiver wire, but that's tough. I think it's tough. But I'll put Allen number 1. I'll put Darnold number 2 because he's probably going to be the starter in week 1. Mm-hmm. Between Mayfield and Rosen, I'm going to say Rosen because it leads into something else that I'm going to talk about. Mayfield's 4, Jackson's 5, and I don't know if Jackson even gets on the field at all because Flacco may have a better season than a lot of people are thinking.
I think Flacco is going to be underrated this year, but I think, speaking as a Ravens fan, I hope they do well this year. But if Flacco and the offense gets off to a slow start, the fans are going to be calling for Lamar Jackson. And I think John Harbaugh is coaching for his job this year. So there might be temptation to put Lamar Jackson in to bring something different side of offense.
So at most, how many starts do you think Lamar Jackson makes?
I think I could see him getting 7 starts.
7? 7? This is at the most. So you're thinking, you don't think Flacco's going to be good at all, really?
He could be underrated, but I know how slow that offense started last year. Granted, there's some upgrades there. You know, maybe Flacco's knee was hurt more than last year. He's gone off for big knee surgery the year before. But I think the temptation there for Harbaugh is going to put Jackson or Flacco to bring something different for the offense because they're behind the Steelers in that division.
Right. I don't think he makes 1 start. I think Flacco just plays the whole year, and the Ravens as a team are better than people expect. I didn't put him in my underrated list, and we were talking about quarterbacks that were underrated and overrated. Now, I didn't put Flacco in that list. We each had 2 or 3 that we thought were underrated and overrated.
Sure.
So I'll go ahead and start. I'll start with my undervalued guys. Mm-hmm. And since I brought up Baker Mayfield, I don't undervalue him, but I undervalue the guy that is the starter right now, and that's Tyrod Taylor. And that's Tyrod Taylor. It's Tyrod now because that's actually his name. It's not Tyrod, as we've been going through all these years.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? Thing about Taylor is he played with the Bills last year and the previous years. He's not been a quarterback that will put up these fantastic numbers, but he'll put up solid numbers, and he can run. I mean, you have that mobility there. So he's a guy that could put up like 2 touchdowns a game and combine for like 200 and 250 yards. So, and a lot of people are thinking, you know, that Mayfield will get, I don't know, the same 7 starts or so, or maybe even more that you thought Jackson would. And Mayfield may even start more than Taylor, but I actually don't think so. I think Taylor, and you have to consider like the start of the year. Mayfield may get in at the end of the year, but if we're talking in fantasy purposes, okay? Most fantasy leagues don't play the whole schedule. They stop at week 16. I think Taylor can play in about 13 to 14 of those games because I think Cleveland as a team will be better anyway. And I think they'll actually start a lot better because, I mean, look at all the weapons that they have. They have a lot better. They have a lot better weapons than they did last year. They got Jarvis Landry. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is throw him the ball. He'll catch like 8 or 9 passes a game and get you. I mean, he'll get you like 70, 80 yards and maybe throwing a touchdown there. But he's a very reliable target.
Definitely.
And their backfield, they got some guys. They got Carlos Hyde. They picked him up. Duke Johnson, he's a receiving threat. If you play in a points per reception league,
sure,
he is higher in the rankings than if he was in a standard league.
Nick Chubb is there.
Nick Chubb is there. I don't think he'll have he'll get some work, but right now he's probably 3rd on the running back depth chart.
Yeah, Nate Taylor is a nice fantasy option
If
But-
if we're talking in terms of where he's ranked, a lot of people rank him right now. I think the range is probably like 25th to 30th, like as among all the quarterbacks. I think he finishes higher than that. I think he's a decent quarterback number 2, and I think if you draft Taylor, he'll be better than they advertise. He'll definitely be better than they advertise, and I think he could finish like 16th, 17th quarterback at the end of the year if he plays. I mean, if you look at the first 13 weeks, I think, and especially if you look at the first half of the season, I think Taylor will be better than what a lot of the other experts are thinking he is.
Here are two things that concern me with Tyrod Taylor, and it's not all his fault. I like his weapons around him, but he plays in Cleveland. And also, you have Hugh Jackson. Come on.
Which you're not a believer.
I'm not a believer in Hugh Jackson. Hey, great props to for going into that cold lake in the middle of December or early January. I forget what it was, but he made a promise. They didn't win a game all year. Here we're going to the what lake is it, Nathan?
You mean like Lake Erie?
Lake Erie, and he held his word. Hey, props on great props to you there, Hugh Jackson, but you're a better offense coordinator than a head coach.
And they have Todd Haley, of all people, as their offensive coordinator this year.
Yes,
A very polarizing figure, at least as far as Ben Roethlisberger is concerned, down when he was in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, talked about Taylor. My other undervalued guy, he's older, but I think if there's one good year left in him, there will be. That's Eli Manning. I think Eli Manning has the weapons there that he can. It's all at his arsenal. You have Beckham, who's coming back from his injury. You have Sterling Shepard, who I like a little better than some people, and you have a running back by the name of you may have heard of him, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, he's good. He's very good, and he will help Manning because you don't have to worry about just Manning because you got Barkley back there, and he's going to be running all over the field. Wait, hold on a second. Their tight end Evan Ingram, he's very good as well. He could finish in the top 5 as far as tight ends, and we'll cover that. We'll go into tight ends a little later, but the only thing about Manning is the inconsistency. Like you'll think it's a good matchup with Manning, like he's playing some terrible defense at home, and you think he's going to get like 300 yards, and he throws up a stinker and gets 150 with a touchdown and 3 interceptions. That's the kind of thing that Manning does, and that's the kind of thing he's done in the recent past.
Sure.
So a lot of people think that Manning is kind of, on the end of the quarterback 2 slot. Like if he's in the 22, 23, 24 among quarterbacks. I think he almost gets to be a quarterback 1. So if you're drafting your team, you're not going to draft Eli Manning as your number 1 quarterback. Eli Manning's a guy that you could draft if you have a Drew Brees. If you have a Drew Brees, or if you have Russell Wilson, something like that, and you want to throw a guy out there that is a quarterback 2 and not really have to worry about him all the time, maybe Eli Manning's your guy.
Right.
Now, I think Eli Manning probably I don't know if he finishes as a quarterback 1 this year, which would be 12th, but he's going to be pretty close. I think he may get into like the 13, 14 range as among quarterbacks.
Nate, it's so ironic because one of my underrated quarterbacks is Eli Manning.
For the same reasons I put out there.
Great minds think alike. Eli Manning is so underrated. He has Beckham, who's probably the best or second best wide receiver in the league, and Turner Brown is clear number 1. But you can make a case for Beckham. When Beckham's on, he is on. With Eli Manning, you got Barkley. Man, Barkley has so much hype coming into this year. They improved that offensive line. Eli Manning has so many weapons. Sterling Shepard, Beckham, Barkley, Ingram. Eli Manning can win you some games, but like you said, there could be some duds in there. But Eli Manning, I would almost rank him higher than an Alex Smith type this year. Or even Andrew Luck. I think you said Eli Manning might finish out top 12 this year. He has a potential to finish top 10 this year.
Top 10?
With those weapons around him.
I think I think the Giants as a team are going to be improved anyway. Manning doesn't really have that many years left. He's I think he's 37, 38, something like that.
He's getting up there in age.
So if he's going to do it, now's the time. And he's got it. If he's not going to do it this year, he's not really going to do it any other year. So I named my two undervalueds. Besides Manning, who do you have, Matt?
I have Derek Carr.
Derek Carr, okay. Why Derek Carr?
Derek Carr reminds me of a young Andrew Luck. He has that so much potential he showed in his rookie year, and even in his first year. He struggled a lot last year, but he's always has weapons around him. He can go back to Crabtree and Cooper.
Well, with Crabtree, he's in Baltimore now, but
Correct.
last year.
I'm referring to last year. This year, you're getting a coach that does know the game about football, but has been out of the game for a long time.
John Gruden could be considered, some could consider him a quarterback guru in a way, and Derek Carr is his pet project this year.
Right. Look what John Gruden did with Brad Johnson when they won the Super Bowl. Brad Johnson didn't put up great numbers, but he got the job done. I think if we're comparing Derek Carr to Brad Johnson, who you're going to get the edge tonight?
I mean, as far as talent-wise?
As talent-wise.
I think Derek Carr is he's definitely more athletic than Brad Johnson.
Yeah. I think Derek Carr has better weapons than what Brad Johnson had. Amari Cooper, I think Gruden will get the best out of Derek Carr, and Derek Carr will surprise some people this year.
And one of your favorites, Jordy Nelson, is over there too now.
I think Jordy can be considered a late round pick this year for you guys because he's good in the red zone. He knows how to get separation in that red zone, and he still has reliable hands.
Yeah. Hey, Nelson's been except when he got hurt. I mean, he was Aaron Rodgers' #1 target. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers would love to have him in Green Bay still.
You can tell by some of the interviews Aaron Rodgers had given in Green Bay that he's not happy when they talked about. I think a reporter asked about them signing Dez Bryant. Why sign Dez Bryant when we gave up Jordy Nelson?
So you actually think Carr is probably you would put him in the quarterback one. You could put him in the quarterback one conversation. I mean,
he's definitely in the conversation.
You're not as high on him as Manning. Am I reading that right?
That is correct, Nathan.
Okay.
Eli Manning is set up for probably his best fantasy football season in a long time. Because you have another Victor Cruz and Sterling Shepard, even a better version of Victor Cruz and Sterling Shepard. And with a fully healthy Beckham and a run game he's never had, maybe he can go back to Brandon Jacobs. Barkley is the real deal, guys.
Okay. Carr. With Carr, I think it's so tough about Derek Carr because you don't know about the Raiders as a whole. Like, Derek Carr had a down year. Everybody thought he would be definitely better than he was last year. Now this year, the expectations are lower. So you draft him as your second quarterback, he could outperform your #1 if he's a guy like, I don't know, if he's a guy like Jared Goff or something like that. You know, you draft Derek Carr not to be your number one quarterback, and most of the guys that we're undervaluing, you're not going to draft as your first quarterback.
Right.
But they're guys that you can add as your backup that could perform at starter levels given at a certain time.
Nate, do you remember what John Gruden did in his first year of Oakland with Rich Gannon? Rich Gannon was a career backup, and Rich Gannon had a great passer rating. It's so accurate. I think Derek Carr could replicate that because Gruden knows quarterbacks, and he's a more offensive-minded coach than defensive coach.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Do you have any other undervalued quarterbacks or was that it?
A guy in a bubble, and he's has a lot of controversy about him.
And I think we were talking about him even before we got here.
It's Patrick Mahomes, guys. Patrick
Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs, who I actually have as one of my overvalued quarterbacks. But we'll start with you, Matt. Why do you think he's undervalued?
He has so many pieces around him. He arguably has the second best tight end in fantasy football in Travis Kelce. He has Tyreek Hill, who is still learning the position of wide receiver, but is so dynamite, he could take it to the house from anywhere on the field. And he has Kareem Hunt, a really good running back no one saw coming last year. And Andy Reid is good with coaching quarterbacks. So I think all the potential is there. I know the interception rate could be high, but that's a guy with big reward, with big risk.
So Mahomes is a guy that you think could be a quarterback one at the end of the year.
Correct. I think he could be this year's version of Deshaun Watson.
Okay. Here's my problem with Mahomes, and it's a general. I think a lot of people are going to be higher on him than they should be because he's a hotter name. Like a lot of people think he's going to be a sleeper because of the potential and how big of an arm he has. He threw the longer pass than any pass last year in the preseason. The arm's there, but I think that the risk would be interceptions. I mean, he's prone to turn the ball over a whole lot. So I think he'll have good games. I think he'll have a couple good games, but as a whole, I think he's just not. A lot of people are going to overvalue him and draft him as maybe a quarterback one, which means like he could be like the 12th, 11th quarterback that comes off the board, and I just don't think that he's going to live up to that value. I think he's more like at the outside, like a top, like in the 20, like number 20 quarterback.
I get that. I think Mahomes has so much potential, but I like him better than Eli Manning. No. But, like I said, high risk, high reward for Patrick Mahomes.
So another guy I actually thought that was underrated. This guy is kind of he's iffy, I think, just because depending on who you ask, he's in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, but I'm just not high on him, and that guy's Cam Newton. Cam Newton, as you know, if you may not know, he actually had shoulder surgery in the offseason, and I know a lot of Cam Newton's value comes from his running, and he's going to get the running no matter what. I mean, he's going to pop in those touchdowns at the 1-yard line, and that's going to be a lot of his value. Throwing-wise, I just don't know about him. He doesn't complete passes at a very high completion percentage. He has Christian McCaffrey that he can dump the ball off to, and McCaffrey can get a lot of those yards on his own. But name me who else he has that he can throw to on the team.
Nathan, I like Cam Newton a lot, Might not be the most accurate like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, but he can be accurate in football. And with Cam Newton, you almost drafted another running back. Because when they go down to the 1 yard line or in the red zone, there's a good likelihood he's going to run the ball in. He can take those hits. He doesn't miss a lot of games. He's consistent, and he holds more value than other quarterbacks.
Yes,
because of running the ball.
Yeah, he's durable. I mean, we can give him that. He actually, we're watching this preseason game, and he was evaluated for concussion, and he returned.
Yeah.
So, I mean, toughness
is not a question.
Is not a question. I mean, he plays through a lot of stuff that most people probably shouldn't play through. And I didn't even think about Greg Olsen because I drafted Greg Olsen last year thinking he was going to be better. He breaks his foot and is out for half the year.
Yeah.
So if Olsen's on and he's 100% healthy, Newton will be he's got a guy that he can throw to. Devin Funchess, you don't know. He's a big guy. He can catch a lot of passes in the red zone. But as far as like putting up big numbers, I just don't know about Funchess.
I don't see it. I will have DJ Moore than Devin Funchess. I think DJ Moore could be a late round flyer for you guys.
For the Panthers.
Yes, yeah. For the Panthers.
So if I'm putting Newton in the terms of how he's going to be drafted as a number 1 quarterback, and he may I don't think he should be drafted as a top 5 quarterback. I think that's way too high. I think he's probably 13th, 14th, something like. I mean, he's around where I think Manning is.
I feel you undervalue Cam a lot. I think Cam Newton will finish top 8.
Top 8, okay.
Matthew, looking at the rankings,
so you're putting him ahead of
Matthew
Stafford. You putting him.
Matthew Stafford's consistent. You know what you're going to get from Stafford. Consistent, sometimes not spectacular. But Cam has the potential to go off at any game, and he was the MVP of the league 2 years ago, was it, Nate?
The year he won the Super, we went to the Super Bowl.
He went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
There's so much potential there for Cam to carry your team for a fantasy football win, or maybe a couple of wins consecutively.
Well, when he's the team's up, it's the greatest thing ever. He does the Superman thing, and he flies around he does his little airplane thing, and he's like the best thing ever. But there's another side of Cam Newton where if he sucks, he pouts like a little girl. I think that's the Cam Newton we're going to see a lot more this year, because I don't think the Panthers as a team are going to be as good as they were last year.
That is true.
Thinking about that, Newton won't be as good as people think he is.
Okay, that's true that when he gets down, he pouts. But there's some quarterbacks we can talk about on this list have missed some time for one reason or another. I'm not talking about injuries. But has Newton ever been in big-time trouble outside of the NFL? Has he committed any major crimes?
Well, no. So he doesn't get suspended. Big deal.
You can rely on Cam Newton, but you can't rely on some other people in...
You mean like Jameis Winston?
As Jameis Winston.
No, I'm not a huge fan of Jameis Winston as it is.
No, me either.
So, he's going to miss 3 games anyway. But when he comes back, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's yet to be determined. Hopefully Jameis can produce on the field.
So you have any other guys that you overvalue?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay. Jimmy G. Why you don't like Jimmy G?
He's been in the league a long time. He's studied under Tom Brady and Bill Belichick the Patriot way. But he reminds me a lot of Matt Castle. Matt Castle took over Tom Brady when Tom Brady got hurt against the Kansas City Chiefs. Came in. They got close to making the playoffs. They might have made the playoffs.
No, they actually missed that. I mean, they were like 11-5, but they missed the playoffs. It was a weird year.
And he got a big contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, he did okay, but he wasn't the next big thing everyone thought coming out of New England into Kansas City. I think if you plug any other quarterback in besides Tom Brady in that system, they're going to succeed. But if you take him out of that system, you take Brady and put him on the other team, he's going to succeed. But if you I think it's more of a system quarterback friendly league in New England, except for Tom Brady.
So, I mean, as far as the hype guys, the hype quarterbacks of Garoppolo and Patrick Mahomes, you value Patrick Mahomes at a much higher level than Garoppolo.
I do, Nathan.
Okay. Well, I think Garoppolo is probably rated just as I think he is. He's in the top 15. He's at the lower part of the top 15. But he won all of the games he started last year. He didn't have huge numbers, but his first 5 games as the guy. He's the guy. So he's the guy now, and the weapons he has aren't like, they don't pop out at you, but there's a lot of kind of potential. A guy like Jerick McKinnon, who they got from Minnesota, he's a very good, for what he is as a runner, he's a very good pass catcher. And for what their system is, what they want him to do, McKinnon could be not too bad. Now, he has Pierre Garçon, and he has Marquise Goodwin. A lot of people think that Marquise Goodwin could outperform Pierre Garçon, and that Garoppolo thinks that Goodwin that he's his target as far as the preseason and anything out of training camp. Goodwin, it could be it. So, yeah, I think Garoppolo is probably about where people rate him. So now we finally move on to the running backs. We've been spending a lot of time on the quarterbacks, but it's just kind of it just kind of worked out that way. So running backs, I think, are probably the most important position on any fantasy team. Most people would agree. At least they get picked higher than anyone else. Some of them probably shouldn't, but that's just how things go. Do you agree on this, Matt, at all?
I agree. Like, playing fantasy football all these years, there's exceptions when you might take a wide receiver or quarterback. It depends where you're drafting. If you're in a 12-team draft and you can't get, for example, the 9th-rated quarterback on this list, it will be Melvin Gordon, and you have a chance to take Hawkins or Antonio Brown with a 9th pick. I had no problem with taking Hawkins or Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham over Melvin Gordon in that position, and especially when you go down the list. But if you can't get one of the studs out there in fantasy football, you can look at a different position.
Okay, so give me your top 5 running backs, and I know there's probably 4 that we're going to agree on that are in the top 5. So just give me in order, what you think the top 5 are.
Number 1 is Todd Gurley.
Okay.
Man, what a monster year last year. Great year. Number 2, we have Le'Veon Bell. Missing 4 games and still having putting up those numbers he did last year. That's a great pick. Can't go wrong with him. Number 3 is David Johnson. He's going to remind the league and remind a lot of fantasy players why he's one of the top rated fantasy football players. Number 4 is Ezekiel Elliott. Man, he just came into the league and took the league by storm. He puts up great numbers. I think he can do it again with a weaker Dallas offense this year. Number 5 is Saquon Barkley. He reminds me of Marshall Faulk. He's going to run the ball. He's going to get a lot of yards. He's also going to catch the ball out of the backfield a lot. He's going to make that whole Giants team so much better. And for a couple fun facts, he went to Penn State. Hope they do well this year. He holds the power clean and squat record at Penn State. So he's not just your smaller back. He's a big boy to tackle.
Well, it definitely will help if they ever decide to put weights on the field. But I mean, with that, he's strong. He's got this. Odell Beckham says he has like some of the strongest legs ever, and I mean, if we're just looking at that, he's gonna he could probably run through a brick wall.
Right.
But I don't put Barkley in my top 5 actually, but the top 4 are exactly the same. But I think David Johnson could go back to number 1. He has that potential because from what he did 2 years ago, it was just amazing. And then he gets hurt in week 1, and then he never comes back. However, with the quarterbacks, it being the knees, Johnson didn't hurt his knee; he hurt his wrist. His legs are fine.
Right.
So I'm not worried about any re-injury. A lot of people would worry about that offensive line. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not above. They're not in the top half. They're not even in the top 2/3. They're probably in the bottom 10, if anything. But Johnson run and pass, and he's a big guy. So right. I think Johnson could be number 1. I'm going to put him at number 3. Bell's number 2. He does his thing where he holds out the whole preseason and he comes back week 1. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. It did work out for Bell last year, and I'm going to put him at number 2 because the potential is for him to be that high. He could get hurt, and then it just all falls to nothing. But I'd say safely Bell's number 2. He could arguably be number 1. Gurley I have at number 1, but I don't think he's going to get as many touchdowns as he did last year. He had 19 touchdowns last year.
It was phenomenal what he did,
and I just don't think he's going to get that. But right. It's really close between the 1, 2, and the 3.
May I chime in? I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that Zeke might be the number 1 rated fantasy football running back at the end of the year because he's all Dallas has this year, besides Dak Prescott. But he's going to catch the ball to backfield, and when they get in the red zone, it's going to be Zeke. There's no going to be other receivers really catching those touchdowns unless they get cute and go to Tavon Austin or Cole Beasley in the red zone. But Zeke is going to get the majority of their touchdowns this year.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that. I mean, Elliott is their offense. However, as we've seen recently, their offensive line's kind of in trouble right now. It's if they're all healthy, it's probably the number 1, if not the number 2 line in the league. But now you don't have Travis Frederick for who knows how long with his what he's going through. And then Zach Martin got hurt, and you don't know if he's going to be there week 1. Jerry Jones says he's going to be there for week 1, but Jerry Jones we can't really rely on.
He's not a doctor.
He's
guys.
not a doctor. No, he isn't. He's definitely not a doctor. Now my number 5 is actually Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon does everything that those guys. He can catch. He can run. Yes. He is unquestionably their guy. So I just like Melvin Gordon to be in that 5th spot.
Gordon is a really good pick. But
does anything really concern you about Gordon?
No, but I don't view him I view him as a top tier RB1. But when you look at, for example, if I had that pick of those backs we just mentioned are gone, I would put Antonio Brown and Hawkins on discussion, even Beckham, because I feel those 3 wide receivers can carry you more for a win than Melvin Gordon can.
But if you're just talking about running backs, just take wide receivers out of the conversation and not put them in.
Sure.
Where you obviously don't put them in the top 5. Do you put them at 6th, 7th?
Of course, Gordon is top 6.
Okay, so he's 6th. All right. Well, I think he's 5th, but I just
it's comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, that's true. I was gonna have a section about Saquon Barkley, but we've already talked enough about him. Matt just wants him so bad. He wanted him in January, and I think he'd probably sell all of his memorabilia, his baseball and football memorabilia, just so he could have the chance to draft Saquon Barkley in fantasy football.
That is correct. But I'm not willing to be a Mike Ditka and sell the whole team like he did for Ricky Williams. But Barkley is the next big thing coming, and I would maybe give him a year, but he could be top 3 fantasy running back.
So obviously we're talking in terms of our own league,
yes.
And we think that all of the people that are ahead of Barkley would be kept. Now, if we were drafting a redraft league, you obviously wouldn't draft Barkley number 1 because you don't put him there.
No. But if I had a chance to take Barkley over David Johnson, let's roll the dice on Barkley.
Wow. That's high. That's pretty high there. I mean, he's hyped up to be, but
it's close, guys. But I think Barkley is the next big thing.
He very well could be.
And that's no disrespect to David Johnson, because in previous years in ESPN fantasy leagues, different from Nathan and I's fantasy league, I had David Johnson, and he's been awesome. But Barkley, next big thing.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. Matt wants Saquon Barkley to he'll give him a room at his house and let him stay there.
Well, I want to go that far, Nathan.
Well, not in the same room, but just let him crash at his house. That's how much he likes Saquon Barkley.
So,
but anyway,
what is your pick on?
So let's actually talk about some of the other rookies in this class, because obviously Barkley's number 1. That's unquestioned.
Yes.
However, there are a lot of rookies that have an opportunity to make an impact this season.
Yes.
I mean, just list them all off. We got what? We got Rashard Penny of the Seahawks, Sony Michel of the Patriots. We have Ronald Jones of Tampa Bay, Royce Freeman from Denver. We have Kerryon Johnson from Detroit. Nick Chubb, you referred to earlier from the Browns. The Colts have a couple of running backs themselves, Naheem Hines and Jordan Wilkins. And I wrote down Kalen Ballage from Miami, but I don't think he's going to make an impact from what I've heard here lately.
Okay.
I mean, he's especially because I think they're going to have Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore just be there too. And Ballage hasn't really impressed in the preseason, even in practice. So I don't know why I wrote him in my notes, but I don't think Ballage will make a big impact.
Sure.
With this in mind, of those rookies, who do you think is the best out of those rookies, and where would you rank him overall?
Rashad Penny, I like the best.
Okay.
He's playing with a very good quarterback, Russell Wilson.
So you're not concerned about his injured finger?
No, it's a finger. And like how we talked about with David Johnson, last year was his wrist. It's his finger. A finger will heal. It's not a knee injury that we'll talk about later with some running backs that might be worth a higher pick or not.
Well, what about the fact that he may not even be the number one running back on his team at the beginning of the season? Because you got Chris Carson there. Chris Carson has got most of the work as the starting running back. And Penny, I just read that he gained 16 pounds in the offseason. I mean, this coming into this training camp.
Mm-hmm. There's opportunity there. I think Wilson there is going to take some relief. Like if you want to have a balanced offense in the league. So I think Wilson's going to help Penny out there, but he could be a bust by gaining those pounds. But he's a nice roll of dice as a rookie running back. But I think Royce Freeman might be the running back to have out of Denver.
Okay, yeah, I think so too. I would put Freeman probably taking out Barkley, and putting in the rest of the rookie running backs. Freeman would probably be number one. Mm-hmm. I think he has the chance to take over the Denver running back job and be the full-time running back. Right. That's why I would think he's going to be probably the best out of that. So, you said about Penny. Where do you rank Penny overall?
I rank Penny. From looking at my personal rankings, I think there could be a case for him in top 30.
Top 30? Okay. Like, not the what? Like 27th, 26th, something like that?
I think he's right on the edge of 30. There.
So these guys are probably not going to be running back, your second running back. Right. They can be in certain weeks, like bye weeks. It could be a flex, but they're probably not going to start most weeks.
But at the same time, Penny, Freeman, or Michelle, Sonny Michelle could be that diamond in the rough that no one sees coming this year. And it's a roll of the dice. They're good to have their team. They're not a wasted bench spot. But like you said, maybe best at flex. Maybe some weeks are RB2.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that. Now you do have these muddled running back by committee. We've seen that a lot more. Now, Freeman for the Broncos is part of running back by committee right now, and even their coach, Vance Joseph, has said they may not even rely on one running back. They may rely on more than one, and they have Devontae Booker in their fold. So the risk about Freeman trying to draft him higher, like trying to sneak up on someone and draft on him as your running back too, is the fact that Devontae Booker is still around, and he may kind of be. He's not going away. He may even be the starter like right now just because of seniority.
Right. So it's really hard to pick.
Broncos situation, Freeman's probably the guy you would pick out of that.
Right.
There are a couple of situations where we're kind of confused as to who we think we would pick. So I'm going to throw out a team.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw out three teams. Three different teams that we're not 100% sure on who will lead them at the end of the year.
Sure.
So I'm going to throw out these three teams. You tell me who you think is the best one out of each team.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the Green Bay Packers. Who do you think their best running back will be at the end of the year? You got a couple choices.
Well, you have Aaron Jones, you have Jamal Williams, and you have Ty Montgomery.
Yep. Those are the choices for sure. And they're so close in like the rankings that you just don't know.
I think the best pure runner of that group is Aaron Jones. But he's suspended 4 games.
Yes, that's is he suspended 4? I thought I think it was 3.
3 to 4.
He's suspended for a couple of games.
Jamal Williams, he can be serviceable. But I think the guy to have out of that backfield You can even possibly call him more wide receivers, Ty Montgomery.
Yeah, pick Montgomery. Oh, he was the definite number one from Green Bay last year. I know that. And
Right, but I think with Montgomery, Aaron Rodgers likes to pass the ball, and I think Montgomery can give you those 4 to 5 yards, but people reference a screen pass or a bubble screen pass is the same thing as almost as a run.
well, the key thing about Montgomery is in past years he was considered a wide receiver in Green Bay, and most fantasy leagues consider him a running back. So that's good for, I think, if you value more, you get more points for receptions as a running back, then yes, he's very valuable.
If you're in a PPR league.
Yeah. I think Jamal Williams will get the most touchdowns.
Okay.
So if you're in a standard league, Jamal Williams is probably the guy to get.
Right.
Aaron Jones could come on near the end of the season because he's out for the first couple games.
But let me ask you this question. When they're in the red zone, are they more likely to run the ball or throw the ball for a touchdown?
Rodgers usually likes to throw the ball
Right.
for past years, and
we can't discredit for Rodgers sneaking one in.
yeah, that's true. But I mean, if we're gonna determine who will score the most touchdowns as a running back for the Packers, I'm going to go with Jamal Williams.
I can't disagree.
I don't think he's going to get. I don't think any of them are going to get 1,000 yards rushing.
No.
I think Jamal Williams could approach 800-ish.
They're not. To have Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and Ty Montgomery on your roster compared to some other combo running backs on the same teams, you could do far worse.
Now the problem with getting one of them is you're rolling the dice. You're taking a risk because you get Ty Montgomery. He's not the number one for them. Then you're stuck with him on your roster and hoping for an injury by Williams or Jones. So
Correct.
If all possible, and if you have the roster space, get two or maybe all three.
Right. I know in our league we're very fortunate. We roster a lot of people, and we have more rounds than more standard drafts had. So,
if you're in a regular league, most regular leagues have 15 or 16 roster slots.
Yeah.
About that. So if you're drafting from them, it's going to be tough to take all three. You may get away with two of them, but if you're going to pick two of them right now, Williams and Montgomery are probably going to be your choices.
I agree, but I think you can slide Aaron Jones later in the draft.
He's a guy you could probably pick up on the waiver wire, just later in the year if you need him.
It depends if you're drafting with a lot of Green Bay fans.
Well, that is true. I mean, us being in Maryland, we're not going to have to worry about that.
Nate, let me ask you a question about a football team. The New England Patriots.
Well, I didn't even think about the Patriots, and I'm going to actually throw another team in later, but Patriots, as far as their running back, the Patriots, they're always hard to predict as far as their running game, okay? In past years, they've had LeGarrette Blount. They had Dion Lewis last year. They had Mike Gillislee last year. They had Rex Burkhead last year. I fell into the trap last year myself, and at the league we're in, trying to get as many Patriot running backs as I could. You can't do it. There's
too many.
On this, if we're looking at the rankings right now of available running backs that could make an impact, you could make an argument of as many as 4 running backs that could make an impact for the Patriots this whole year.
Right.
Now, from what people have been reporting here recently, there's a guy that sticks out more than all of them, and they're saying that they're resting him in the preseason because they think they're resting him now because they need to use him more in the regular season, and that guy's Rex Burkhead. So if we're going to pick one guy out of that whole Patriots team, I'll pick Rex Burkhead.
I'm going to go with James White for the simple fact is Tom Brady trusts James White.
He trusts James White as far as throwing the ball. Running the ball, he doesn't really run the ball all that much.
But is Burkhead that valuable as a runner? Because Burkhead, I view Burkhead as more as a receiver.
I think his opportunities are going to be more as a runner because Sony Michel may not even stay healthy, and even Burkhead, they were talking about he's got some knee problems himself, and that's part of the reason why they're going to rest him.
See, Michel reminds me of LeGarrette in Detroit.
Yeah.
But Nate, what's some other teams that you want to talk about for the running back situation?
Well, I kind of wanted to bring up a team that we just don't know anything about, and I talked about like a couple of their rookies earlier. That's the Indianapolis Colts. And none of these guys really stick out to be like a guy that you can really rely on. They have the starter, I guess you could consider to be Marlon Mack.
Yes.
As the incumbent. Marlon Mack has been injured for most of the preseason with a hamstring, and who knows if he's going to start week 1. The Colts don't even know at this point.
Right.
Now, they have their 2 rookies. They have Nyheim Hines, who has fumbled apparently 4 times in the last 2 preseason games. They're not going to want to give him the ball if he keeps fumbling. They like his potential, but...
That's a good way to keep yourself on the bench.
Yes, it is a very good way to keep yourself off the bench, on the bench, that is. Jordan Wilkins is a guy that is...
Some interest.
Has intrigue. I think he is working... He's not working as the number 1 running back right now. He is at times, but I don't think he's someone that they consider the number 1 right now. It's odd because I've heard a name that has been in fantasy football past that has had flashes with Seattle Seahawks, and his name being Christine Michael. If you draft Christine Michael as the number 1 running back for the Indianapolis Colts, you're dead wrong.
Guys, and every fantasy football player out there, you're going to hear from me first. I'd rather have Ty Montgomery than Christine Michael.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, Christine Michael shouldn't even be... I wouldn't draft Christine Michael in the top 80 running backs.
I'd rather have James Conner than Christine Michael.
Would you rather have, let's see, Darren Sproles than Christine Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you rather have...
I don't even consider Christine Michael a threat. He's just there because he has the experience as a running back. And Robert Turbin's there too, and he's the goal line guy, but he's suspended for the first 4 years.
I hope Christine Michael does well, but there's so many better options than Christine Michael.
No, definitely. So, I guess you're saying Wilkins is probably the best one out of that?
He has the most appeal. Marlon Mack had some fanfare coming in the league last year. Granted, he didn't have a good offense, but I think he averaged under 4 yards per carry last year.
Yeah. Maybe that was a product of the Colts' offensive line.
Right.
Their line has improved. It's not like it's not the best offense. It's in the middle of the road.
Mack and Wilkins could be bench players. Maybe fill in a spot for 1 or 3 guys.
These are all bench players in my eyes. There's not one of them who I'd want to start. And if I had to start any of them, I'd be in trouble. And especially if you have to start one like week 7. Mm-hmm. How are you going to guess now? How are you going to guess right now who's going to start week 7 for the Indianapolis Colts? I can't. There's no way.
That is tough to say, Nate.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. So, I'm going to actually go into our undervalued and overvalued part of as far as our running backs are concerned.
Okay.
So let's do one undervalued and one overvalued. So the undervalued guy that I'm going to pick, actually, before all this, I debated because no one really stuck out to me. Okay.
Okay.
I had Marlon Mack in there because just based on in early August they were hyping him up, but if he can't stay healthy, he's not going to be undervalued. He's just kind of there. But I'm between two guys myself, and I had this. I'm gonna just throw this guy out. I'll throw out Alex Collins. Alex Collins is right now. He's in the top 20. Okay.
Yeah.
For the Ravens, and he's had problems in the past, the early part of last season with fumbling. He fixed that.
Yes.
If he finished as one of the better running backs in the league last year in the last 3 games,
close to under 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah. There's not really anybody there that I think can take away from him, at least for the beginning of the year. I mean, they have Kenneth Dixon, they have
Allen.
They have Buck Allen, but I think Collins could be a guy that sees almost all of the carries just because that's what the Ravens really do. They're going to have a guy that's there that gets 20 carries a game, and that guy's going to be Alex Collins.
You're right on point, Nate, and speaking... I'm a Ravens fan. I like Collins a lot. There's a lot of potential there. He can finish a top 15 back.
I think Collins could be. I'll put Collins as 12. So he's like the last RB1. Do not draft him as your first running back. Do not do that, because if you do and he fails, then you're going to be in trouble. Right now he's draftable as a running back too, with potential to be maybe a running back 1, and some weeks he could be a top 5 scorer.
Okay.
So, who do you have as undervalued?
The guy I like a lot this year.
And it's not Saquon Barkley.
It's not. He's not from Penn State either. He's from.
It's not Blair Thomas or Curtis Enos. They've long gone.
He's Roll Tide. Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry. Okay.
Undervalued.
Ooh. Well, the issue I have with Derrick Henry is that he's got Dion Lewis there, and to me it looks like they're going to split it up pretty even.
Henry has the potential to be a top 12, top 10 back in the league. He lost a lot of weight. There's a popular picture going about between, you see Henry taller than Lewis, and you can tell both of them are in shape. But Henry's built like a truck, and he's going to plow you over, and he has some speed. I hope to see that Derrick Henry will be the first down and second down back, and Lewis is to change the pace back on third down, catching the ball. But when that ball is in the red zone, you gotta give it to Derrick Henry. Like he has so much potential that has not been unlocked from previous coaching staffs.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a number out there as far as number of touchdowns. You tell me over or under.
Okay.
And this is total touchdowns. I don't think he's really going to be involved in the receiving game.
No.
He is not a receiver at all.
That's not
if
his
you're
game.
if you're in a PPR league, he's not a guy to target as a receiver. He may catch 15 catches the whole year, 20 at the most.
If that.
So these are going to be mostly rushing touchdowns, but I'm under 10 touchdowns whole year. Derrick Henry
Over.
How much over?
By 2. I think
12?
12 rushing touchdowns.
That's tough for me. I think he's definitely going to be improved from because he's going to get more work.
Right.
I can't put him. I think if he's advertised right now as a top 20, he's on the low end of that top 20.
Right.
I think a lot of more people are going to draft him higher than they should.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get drafted over guys like... he may get drafted over a guy like Collins. He may get drafted before a guy like a Burkhead, or... he definitely needs to get drafted before Dion Lewis.
Right.
So
No doubt about it.
I think Derrick Henry would get drafted in most drafts as like the 15th running back, if on an average, give or take. I don't think he's the 15th best running back.
I think we're picking Henry. It has to be at the right spot for him. You can't overreach for him, but if you got, and there's some football advice, fantasy football advice. If you like a guy, don't be afraid to take him a round earlier, because you don't want to have regret not getting the guy you want.
Okay. Yeah. It's fair. I thought Derrick Henry looked amazing in that Kansas City game in the wild card round. He didn't do well against New England after that.
Definitely.
But the problem is they signed Lewis, and Lewis is going to take whatever you would think Derrick Henry should have away. I mean, receiving-wise, Derrick Henry wasn't going to be that guy, but still, Lewis had a really good year last year, and they brought him in to split time with him.
I'm a Derrick Henry fan, but the one thing that's concerning is the head coach of the Tennessee Titans is Mike Vrabel. Mm-hmm. And where does Mike Vrabel come from, Nathan?
He used to play for the Patriots.
And what's Bill Belichick known for that running game?
Well, not one running back. I know that.
So that's the concerning part. But I think Derrick Henry will break that mold of the New England coaching staff.
Yeah. Definitely some points to consider.
Nathan? Let me bring up a name, because we're gonna talk about wide receivers and tight ends and defenses later. What is your take on Dalvin Cook this year?
Funny you should bring up Dalvin Cook. You know how we're talking about overvalued guys? I put him in my overvalued list because Dalvin Cook is a very hyped running back. A lot of people are going to draft him probably as their 10th or 11th among running backs. He was looking pretty good last year, but as you may know, he tore his ACL in week 4.
Yeah.
Week 4, I think. So, you can't run without your legs.
No, that's obvious.
Yeah. Just like Lieutenant Dan couldn't run without his legs.
But there's guys, in Special Olympics, and people that do run without one leg or so, they can play, and more power to them, and that's impressive to me, Nathan.
Well, that's impressive to me. They don't play in the NFL, and they're not going to get drafted in these fantasy football leagues. But for the simple fact
of running.
No. Dalvin Cook can outrun both of us, probably, if we did a relay. And if we're talking a 40-yard dash, right. I ran 20, you ran 20, he'd beat us by probably 5 seconds. And that's being generous.
He has more talent than we could ever wish for.
In terms of fantasy football, I think Dalvin Cook is overvalued because he hasn't proven anything.
Agreed.
To me. He's a guy that, and even they were even talking about how he may split, at least at the beginning of the year, time with Latavius Murray, who was their. He was their main type of runner last year, especially in the goal line.
And Latavius was no scrub either.
No, I mean, even when he got released
from Oakland,
I thought it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And Murray still, he won't be one of these guys that is fantastic, but he's a solid running back if he has the opportunity.
And the one thing that worries me about Cook, the offensive line. You don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to bring to the table. Do you know if that offense is going to miss a beat or not? And it's a new OC in Minnesota. So, Minnesota has all the potential to make it a Super Bowl run. But there's some new pieces there that need to blend together. Not big pieces, but drafting Cook is rolling the dice.
Well, the offensive line situation was so bad in Minnesota that Joe Burger retired before the beginning of this season. They called him up to see if he would come back, and he turned him down.
Well, his last name is Burger, correct?
Yeah, Berger, not Hamburger.
But speaking of burgers, the food, do you have a favorite place you like to get burgers from, Nathan?
I like Wendy's. I mean,
Wendy's is good.
okay.
Yeah, I can't go wrong with Wendy's. Burger King used to be good. Hopefully, I'd rather have a Burger King burger than most places, but McDonald's, they have a good burger.
Okay, yeah. How many burgers do you think Dalvin Cook could eat in one sitting?
I don't know. It's hard to say how many burgers he has a year because he keeps himself in great shape, like all talented fantasy football players do.
But if we're talking about Cook, and as far as how I rate him as a running back, I don't rate him in the top 10. I know that. I rate him probably... he's still a running back 2. He's still a running back 2. People are going to draft him as a running back 1. I'll say he's probably 16th.
Nate, I like Jay Ajayi better than Delvin Cook.
Okay, yeah. And Jai's a tough one for me to even, like...
hard to evaluate.
He's hard to evaluate because he got traded from the Dolphins last year mid-season, and they didn't really use him all that much. I mean, he got, 12 carries a game? Mm-hmm. And now they're going to give him... They're going to up his workload for sure. I mean, he's going to approach, 15, 16 carries a game and catch a couple passes here and there.
So I think that's good RB2 material.
Okay.
But he has RB1 potential.
You think Ajayi could be an RB1?
Right.
I don't see it.
Borderline.
Well, agree to disagree. We'll say that.
Overrated guy for me, Nathan, is Jerick McKinnon. He has so much hype. I understand he's got a lot of volume workload, but it's not a rookie that's coming in the league out of nowhere. He's been in Minnesota. He's been at best the third best back in Minnesota. Now he has a big contract. Expecting to carry the load, be a PPR machine. If you draft him as your RB1 or a high RB2, you're going to be sadly disappointed.
McKinnon's biggest issue is the injuries. Durability has always been an issue with McKinnon. He's injured right now. He's not going to play for the whole preseason. They're saving him for week 1. There's a lot of teams are saving their players for week 1. So McKinnon to me is he's tough to call. I think he could be. I'd say he's like 15th, 16th, 17th overall. As far as I'm concerned, it seems like that's the case. So before we get to the rest of the positions, I'd like to go and do a 546 project tradition with Matt. We go with a segment for almost every episode. It's called the Food Box, and where we just try different foods that we pick up wherever. And we got 2 different items on this version of the Food Box. Each of us actually picked one of these items. Matt, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the cookies I picked.
Okay. So, Matt, you picked the Keebler Fudge Stripe cookies, chocolate caramel flavor. I haven't had these, and you obviously haven't had these.
I have not.
I don't know if they're actually new, but they're new to us. I know that.
Exactly. So let's give it a try.
So, yeah. I haven't had, fudge stripe cookies in a long time. And you almost picked the dark chocolate mint, but you decided against those.
Yeah, just
so straight out of the box. I mean, I smell a nice. It kind of smells kind of like coffee, but you can go ahead and give it a whiff.
I agree with you. It's a nice.
It's chocolate and caramel, and there's no coffee in it. But
it might be good with coffee.
It could. I mean, you could have it with any cup of coffee if you wanted to. So I'll go ahead and take one. You can go ahead and take one here. And so
they look appealing.
1, 2, 3, dig in. they all right. I don't know if they're like. I mean, if I had to pick them up again, I'm leaning probably towards a no. I mean, I don't really taste. It tastes kind of more butterscotch than caramel.
I agree, but I don't hate them. Okay.
They are kind of on the dry side. They're okay. I think I would like the dark chocolate mint more myself if I had a chance to get those. These chocolate caramels are kind of in the middle.
Yeah. I will get them again, but I think I'd rather have the original Kibolo cookies when you remove the top and the bottom like Oreo cookie.
You mean like the eel fudge?
Yeah, the eel fudge.
Yeah, we used to get them all the time. Like my mom got them. She liked the eel fudge, and she liked those. You know those Vienna fingers?
It's been a while since I had one.
He used to like the Vienna finger blizzard. They had a Dairy Queen blizzard that had Vienna fingers and banana and strawberry, and that was her favorite. And they took that off the menu, so she was sad when that happened. As far as these cookies are concerned, they're okay. Probably wouldn't buy them myself. So, move on to the second entry, and I have not seen these. Special for Halloween, I guess. But these are M&M's cookies and Scream M&M's, and they say cookies and Scream on them. So I go ahead and cut into the bag and have a handful of these. Just looking at the box of the bag itself. The M&M themselves, they look kind of like a space type thing with the pattern.
It seems like they're getting ready for Halloween.
Yeah. So I'll take a handful here. Now they really don't. Some of them don't look like that spacey type pattern. Some of them will just look like black M&Ms. But as far as, I mean, they smell like. I don't know about those. There's now the mix is supposed to be dark chocolate with milk chocolate inside. They smell they smell like dark chocolate, but it's not a good dark chocolate to me.
It smells like a really dark coffee.
It smells like they burn it. Anyway, smells over, time to taste. So go ahead and dig in. They're supposed to taste like cookies and cream. They do not. They just taste like dark chocolate covered whatever.
Maybe we should go back to the cookies.
Well, I mean, this one kind of was a dud as far as a food box. I mean, of either of these, I don't know if I'd get them again. I'm gonna be forced to eat the M&Ms because I've got them, but you know. Which one do you like better?
I like the cookies. It's more flavored than these. These do not taste like cookies and cream to me.
It was not as advertised. I'll agree with you there. I mean, they're okay as M&Ms. There's a lot more M&M flavors that I like. I mean, the peanut butter, I like.
Or the regular kind of M&Ms.
Well, that's true.
Even peanut M&Ms.
Caramels, I think, are better.
Peanut.
Pretty much every one that I've had. And I would never have the candy corn M&Ms. They make me throw up.
That just sounds nasty.
They do sound nasty. All candy corn, from what I've heard, was made like 200 years ago, and they're just bringing it out in batches. So, I mean, that goes to show you there. But
eat at your own risk.
Yeah, eat at your own risk. Me, these cookies and Scream M&Ms. If I had to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give them like a 4-ish.
For M&Ms, I would give them a 2.
2 out of 10. They were that bad.
For the cookies, I would give a 5.
That's fair. I like those a little bit better. I'd say 5 as well. So yeah, that's our food box segment, and one of our more popular segments. And you got christened into that. So, congratulations, Matt.
I think Nathan will do better next time.
Yeah. We'll see. But now we'll move on to the wide receivers.
Okay.
Since we've got our stomachs full of chocolate and
Yes.
caramel and cookies and cream. But
Maybe we need some coffee later, too.
yeah, maybe to just keep us up through the whole thing, you know. But anyway, wide receivers come into play a lot more, and they're more valuable if you talk about PPR leagues because they're the ones that catch all the passes.
Nate, let me cut you off. For those who are not familiar or maybe first time playing fantasy football, what does PPR mean?
PPR is exactly what it says it is. You get 1 point for every pass you catch, point
Right.
per reception.
Exactly. So that comes into play with kind of league you're in, if you're a standard or PPR league.
So, the number one wide receiver by most everybody's standards, and some would argue could be the most valuable player in fantasy football altogether, depending on the league that you do play in, is Antonio Brown.
Correct. Before we get into it, I have a little Antonio Brown story.
Okay.
A buddy of mine, Wayne, plays in his own league, and this guy new to fantasy football, knows a little about football, took Mike Evans over Antonio Brown with the first pick in the draft.
Wait a minute, what? He did what? Say it again.
He took Mike Evans over Antonio Brown.
Is this person a fan of the Buccaneers in any way, or does he not know football?
No, but I don't know why. And this same guy is keeping AJ Green this year. And this guy's in the 8-team keeper league. And he could easily have the number one pick this year again, but he's keeping AJ Green. And so that pushes him down in the draft because he's keeping one player. So Wayne has the number one pick, and more likely he'll be drafting Todd Gurley. So, guys, make sure you do your homework a little bit. Read a book, go to ESPN.com, or any of the...
Any fantasy website, there's probably...
And you
there's
can find
over 100
rankings.
of them.
So, back to Antonio Brown, Nate.
So, I'll pose the question again. Do you think he's the most valuable player in fantasy football? For consistency and what he brings, do you think that he... I think he's... In past years, he's been head and shoulders above every other wide receiver.
Correct.
So, if you take that into consideration, depending on the league you play in, he's better than... he's one of the better picks that you could make.
Right. But, as we talked about in the running back section, if you don't get one of those main guys, I'm going to throw Gordon, and you can throw Fournette in the mix. And I have no problem taking Brown over Gordon. But if you don't get Fournette, at least Fournette, you should be looking at Antonio Brown in the first round.
Yeah.
At any kind of draft, PPR or standard.
Now, with Antonio Brown doing so well these past couple of years, do you think he's ready? Is this the year that he slides? He goes down in production? Or do you think
I think yes, because he's getting up there in age a little bit.
he's not the biggest receiver in the league either?
No.
He's there. I mean, he gets the ball because Roethlisberger trusts him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think he could be in line for an off year, because the problem with Antonio Brown, he's turned into one of these diva wide receivers that he's all about himself and about what he's getting.
Right.
And that's not the Steeler way. Steeler way is team play, and a lot of people they're kind of souring on Antonio Brown.
Right.
He's got his contract already, so he's set. Whatever he does,
Bringing up a member of this podcast and a big Steelers fan, Kevin. If you were speaking for Kevin, Nathan, and I'm going to have you speak for Kevin, would you rather have Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown if you could only have one Steeler?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. If I'm speaking for Kevin, geez, I don't know. I know he doesn't like Roethlisberger all that much. I know that. Man, if I had to pick between one of them,
are you picking for Kevin or for yourself right now?
I'm picking. I'll just pick for myself. If I had to pick either one as a longevity play, I would say Brown. Not by much, because receivers age better than running backs. Bell is getting. He's not getting any younger, and I think Bell he's come off of a torn ACL. He's had injuries in the past. Brown, for the most part, has stayed healthy. He's had his ailments here and there, but
Me, I would take Le'Veon Bell. Antonio Brown's clearly the best wide receiver in fantasy football. Big part of the offense. But Antonio Brown does not run gadget plays. He does not run the ball to the backfield. But in comparison to Le'Veon Bell, he rushes the ball and he catches the ball in the backfield. He's a double threat. So if I'm going to start a team between those two, I would take Bell, because I like the days of football when you ground and pound and you win defense. Some people said defense wins championships, but you can't go wrong with either pick. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a good question to ask Kevin later in the season, or maybe for next podcast.
Yeah, I'll certainly try to remember that. His NFL fandom's kind of been going in the decline, but he's still a Steeler fan through and through. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to move on here, and I'm going to bring up a name that is kind of polarizing in a way. He's definitely not in the number one. He's not the number one running back, wide receiver. He's not in the top 10. And if it were my opinion, he shouldn't even be drafted in the top 50. That guy's Josh Gordon of the Cleveland Browns. Josh Gordon, for some reason, people in fantasy football think he's this diamond in the rough that everybody seems to like. And I don't get it. He hasn't had a good year. He hasn't produced a good year in 4 or 5 years.
He has all the talent in the world. He can be up there in the top 15.
You think he can be in the top 15?
He has that much talent. But what Josh Gordon is, will he play all year or the majority of the season? So,
well, it's a matter if he actually suits up in week 1 at this point. He's back with the team, but so Nathan, he's got to. My thing is, for someone to be out that long, and he did play last year, and from what he produced, he was all right. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was spectacular, but it's just I don't think. If you're drafting Josh Gordon and you think you unearthed like the holiest of grails as far as wide receivers is concerned, you didn't. If you draft him as your second wide receiver, you're going to be disappointed, and it's going to be ridiculous. Right. And let me tell you something about Josh Gordon. When it came into our fantasy football league, the first year you were in the league, okay. That was 2015. The first year, I think you may have had your own team, if I remember correctly. It was is one of those years that, for some reason, we go by a salary cap where certain players are a certain salary.
Right.
Now, Josh Gordon came in at $1, and that was because I think there was the specter of him getting suspended, which he ultimately was. But long story short, some guy in our league decided to draft Josh Gordon in the 3rd round. Now, if you play in a league where you have these guys that don't know what they're doing, and they make picks that are questionable, like if they keep kickers, which happened also in our league,
It's better for your team.
it's better for your team because you don't have to pick that guy. But it questions, it makes your head spin, and.
Right.
And drafting a guy like Josh Gordon in the 3rd round, the 5th round, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round, don't do it.
Right.
Just don't do it. I think he has. I don't think he has the potential to put up the numbers that he did when he made the Pro Bowl that one year. Forget that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could catch 50 passes, like 700 yards, 4 touchdowns, maybe.
But again,
But if you're expecting like 1,000 yards and like 9 touchdowns,
Right.
no, forget it.
but Nathan, you also have to keep in mind they play in Cleveland, and also you have Landry there as a PPR machine. So if you want to take Josh Gordon,
Which does fall into Gordon's favor because he doesn't
Right.
have to be the guy.
but if you want to take Josh Gordon, 10th round or lower, guys, for Josh Gordon.
Yeah. I don't. Me personally, I don't put him in my top 50.
He's not going to win you a fantasy football season.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't put him as high as like a consensus ranking of somewhere in the 30s or even like in the 20s. I would definitely not put him in that.
Let me mention a name to you.
Okay.
It's an intriguing name. I think it's undervalued as my undervalued guy.
Sure.
Demarius Thomas.
I like Thomas. I've had him in leagues before. He produces pretty well. The thing about Thomas is
He was hurt a lot last year.
He's a guy that most weeks will get you 6 catches, 89 yards, and probably throwing a touchdown. So
Yeah.
you know what you're getting with that.
Definitely.
And sometimes that's the best type of guy to get because you know what you're going to get. He's a solid wide receiver number 2, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Thomas probably better than some other people.
Sure. I like Thomas. And
Now the issue with Thomas would be,
what would it be, Nate?
it would be that Case Keenum is his quarterback. Keenum had a very good year last year, but how many other good years has Case Keenum had?
Right. But I think the Vikings should have cut Case Keenum or Kirk Cousins because they had a good chemistry there. But Case Keenum is going to be an upgrade over Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian. But don't expect Case Keenum to be in the Pro Bowl next year.
No, I wouldn't think so either. But he definitely is better than those guys which Thomas was catching passes from, and Brock Osweiler you could put in that conversation from last year.
But Thomas is solid, and that's the best compliment I can give him. I thought he used to, when he was younger, it was a clear-cut number 1. Now he's a solid RB2. I mean, solid wide receiver 2, guys.
Yeah, I don't undervalue him. I think he's probably going at the low top 20, which is probably where he should be going. So I didn't put him as my undervalued wide receiver. A guy I actually do have as an undervalued wide receiver is, ironically, Antonio Brown's teammate Juju Smith-Schuster. And now I think he's coming in at about top 25 as far as wide receivers. My thing is, I just don't think that Antonio Brown's going to have as good of a year as he has in the past. Just because I think he's due for a down year. He could get hurt. Something could happen with him. I think Juju could eventually fall at the low end of a wide receiver one. They're going to throw. They're going to. They have Le'Veon Bell, but they're not really a ground type. Pittsburgh is ordinarily a ground type of.
They used to be.
They used to be, but now that they have the capabilities, they have all these guys. I think that Smith-Schuster could be at the low end of a wide receiver one. Don't draft him like a wide receiver
it doesn't concern me Ty Haley left because you still got Brown, Bell, and Roethlisberger.
But if you get Smith-Schuster as the 19th overall wide receiver, 19th, 20th overall wide receiver, he's going to outproduce that, and I think he could finish in the top 12 at the end of the year.
Right. Well, another guy I just want to talk about real quick, I like a lot. And you can call me a homer, but I think it's going to have good touchdown numbers. I mean, maybe 7 to 8 is Michael Crabtree. He's a good red zone guy.
Yeah, Crabtree is definitely good in the red zone. I think he could click with Flacco. I think he could get Crabtree could get his normal 7 or 8 touchdowns this coming year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much he'll produce as far as receptions and yards. I don't know if he would reach 1,000 yards, but he could get into the 900 yards for the year, catch, I don't know, 60, 65 passes. I mean, is that far off?
I don't think so, but I think he's gonna be more valued in the red zone. I think you're gonna see John Brown and Willie Snead move the chains in passing.
I've heard that the Ravens really like John Brown.
Yeah,
that he could be. He could. If we're talking about right now, as far as Brown's ranking among wide receivers, he comes in. Ooh, where does he come in? He's not very high rated. He's not barely in the top 60.
The thing with John Brown is health.
Yes, that's. Yeah, he can't stay healthy, and that's probably why that he's outside of the top 60 right now.
John Brown reminds me of Torrey Smith when Torrey Smith was playing with the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Overvalued guy I have, Nate, is Sammy Watkins.
Mm.
All the potential in the world. The Bills trade up for him, they gave up a lot. He's never lived up to his potential. He might in KC. He's with Andy Reid. But he's not a wide receiver one, guys.
Well, and we covered this earlier that I don't like Mahomes, and Pat Mahomes throws him the ball,
Right.
And if I'm going to go with one strictly wide receiver from the Chiefs, it's going to be Tyreek Hill. And the problem with Kansas City is you have more than him. You have Travis Kelce and you have Hunt, as we covered already. Watkins just doesn't have a lot of opportunities to succeed, especially in that offense.
I know Kelsey's a tight end, but wouldn't you consider him a wide receiver also?
Well, I mean, if your league combines wide receivers and tight ends, if I had to say I just slotted Kelce as a wide receiver, just off of wide receiver production, man, he probably would be in the top 25, top 20. But most leagues don't most leagues have tight ends as a separate position. So, but actually, yeah. Speaking of tight ends, why don't we just go ahead and move on to the tight end position?
That sounds good, Nate.
So, most everybody would agree that the top 3 tight ends this year, and they are kind of overwhelming favorites. Rob Gronkowski is number 1. Travis Kelce is number 2. Zach Ertz is number 3. You could switch Ertz and Kelce at your leisure. I mean, I wouldn't, but that's...
I have no problem with that.
Probably, those are the top 3 for sure. My question I'm going to pose to you right now is, who's the 4th best tight end?
Jimmy Graham.
You like Jimmy Graham. That's where we're going to disagree, but go ahead and tell me why you like Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham has been really good in fantasy football with Drew Brees. Drew Brees, clearly a Hall of Famer, guys. Russell Wilson, I think he can be a Hall of Famer, but I think Drew Brees is a better passer. In Seattle was more ground and pound, even though they threw the ball, they tried to get Graham really involved in the offense. But when you put Graham with Aaron Rodgers, Graham's going to go over 10 touchdowns. And there's no Jordy Nelson there.
Well,
like, Aaron Rodgers will find a way to get Jimmy Graham those touchdowns. Better than Russell Wilson did.
in my opinion, you're trying to read the phone book in Aspen, Colorado, and trying to look for Mary Swanson, and you're saying Samsonite. You are way off, in my opinion. I don't think Jimmy Graham is going to be. Now, I don't see him as the fourth best tight end. I barely see him as. He may be 10th, maybe even 11th.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like him at all. Because Aaron Rodgers doesn't really feature in past years tight end so much. There's only one guy that I remember that Rodgers threw to a lot and that's Jermichael Finley. Right. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Nathan, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. But Aaron Rodgers never had a type of tight end like Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, but I think you're thinking of Jimmy Graham from the past. Jimmy Graham, Saints Jimmy Graham. Saints Jimmy Graham's gone.
But he still has that potential with Aaron Rodgers, the number 1 rated quarterback in fantasy football. Nate, would you, besides Devontae Adams, who's the best receiver on the Green Bay Packers?
I'll say Randall Cobb. I will say Randall Cobb.
I agree to disagree. Yeah. It's Jimmy Graham.
No, I would pick Randall Cobb over Jimmy Graham. I know a lot of people don't think that, but
hey, Randall Cobb is underrated, but Jimmy Graham, top 4 tight end.
The number 4 tight end I'm going to say is Evan Ingram, and we covered Eli Manning earlier today, and that's probably why, because I think Eli Manning's going to have a year that he's going to be better than people think, and Evan Ingram is going to be part of that reason.
Right. I'm going to make this statement, guys. If you can't get Gronk, Ertz, Kelce, in my opinion, Jimmy Graham, you can wait on a tight end to late in the draft because you're going to find other better value when you want to draft a tight end.
My deal is, in most leagues, you're thinking about tight end. If you're thinking about Gronkowski and Ertz and Kelce, you're going to probably start to think about them maybe in the 5th round, 4th at the most. So if you're drafting them there, the tight end category falls off a cliff, in my opinion, after those 3 guys. So the 4th tight end, I don't think you should think about the 4th tight end maybe until the 7th round.
I would even wait later because...
Yeah. This is a year where a lot of different people could end up to be tight ends that are higher than There's no one guy that sticks out. I mean, Graham is one guy that could produce at that level. Engram, Greg Olson's coming back.
I'm not trying to go homer, but I know he says right now, but later in the year, Hayden Hurst could be a really good tight end and fantasy football this year.
Except the fact that Hayden Hurst broke his foot
he's
and he's out for.
But I'm saying later in the year. But also, Jesse James does catch some touchdowns in Pittsburgh too. You know, you could do worse than Jesse James in fantasy football.
I would not draft Jesse James. But here's the thing. Most leagues, you're going to draft one tight end. You may draft a second one as a backup, but that depends on roster spots. So at most leagues,
you need two tight ends.
Maybe 18 tight ends at the most get drafted. So Jesse James falls outside of that, in my opinion. Yeah. So Jesse James would be probably at best a waiver wire pickup on a bye week.
A guy I see underrated, Nate. I know it's going to be difficult for them to win some games. Is Cameron Brate? He puts up numbers. I know OJ Howard is there, and he has all the potential, but Brate will give you solid numbers like a Jack Doyle.
No, Brate has produced numbers in the past, and it seems like Winston relies on him. But the problem, as you said, lies in O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard was a rookie last year. Now he's not, and I think that they're going to give him a little bit more of the work.
But I don't think Brate will be phased out.
No, not completely, but it's tough to think Cameron Brate should not be drafted as your first tight end. I would gather that.
But if you had to start him, there's worse tight ends to start.
Yeah. So, I mean, a guy I actually underrate. I don't, if you're talking about tight ends and you're drafting this guy as your first tight end, don't do it. But if you're looking for a backup that may produce to tight end one position, I think it's Ben Watson. Ben Watson is back with the Saints. He was with the Ravens last year. He had a year that few people thought he would. I mean, he was reliable for Flacco. One of the few that actually were. He's older. He's getting up there in the years. But there's one thing that Drew Brees, and this goes back to the Jimmy Graham theory. He had Jimmy Graham back when he was a beast, and he threw to him.
Right.
Now, last year, he had managed to have Coby Fleener, and we don't even need to explain that one because Coby Fleener was every bit of terrible except for the first 2 or 3 weeks. He just fell off the face of the earth, and he got a concussion, and I don't think anybody picked him up. So for Watson, I think Watson is out. He's kind of in the top 20 range right now.
Sure.
You're not going to draft him as your first tight end.
Right.
He could with these tight ends, the tight end position being just kind of hard to predict from year to year. These guys come out of nowhere. I think Ben Watson could come out of nowhere. He could produce at a tight end one, He could be in that top 12.
Right. A guy from your favorite NFL football team, and from my favorite college football team, we are Penn State. Mike
Gesicki. And it's funny you mentioned Mike Gesicki because he is another undervalued guy that I have on my list.
I think he has potential. He has a lot of athletic ability, as every NFL player does. But I think he'd be very valuable in the red zone. And Adam Gase was the OC in Denver, and he featured Julius Thomas a lot when Julius Thomas was at his prime.
Well, he had him last year. He had Thomas last year, and I think they wanted him to be better, but the problem was he wasn't healthy at all. And he kind of lost everything since Denver.
And Julius Thomas retired today.
Yes, he did retire today.
And he's gone after his PhD and studied the brain.
Right.
I wish him the best. Good for you getting out early.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I thought Thomas would be better than he was last year, but it just didn't. He didn't really look like he was all there.
No,
honestly. I mean, he tried, but that Dolphin team, and I would know, it wasn't good at all.
Right.
They had trouble. I mean, the games they won, they shouldn't have won. And I think their offense, they do want to feature the tight end some. Mm-hmm. I do like Gesicki a lot. Mm-hmm. Don't draft him as your first tight end.
Right.
I mean, I don't think you should. I don't know if you should really draft him at all, to be honest. I mean, if your league's only drafting 18 tight ends, I don't think he falls in that category right now. And I don't think he will produce early. I don't think he'll produce in the first couple of games. But if you're going to look at weeks 5 to your playoffs, which may fall in week 15 to week 16, and you pick up Mike Gesicki off a bye week as, I don't know, maybe a backup tight end or whatever.
Yeah.
And you keep him on your roster, I think you'll find that he will produce close to a tight end one level where you could plug him in for a couple weeks. Sure. And there could be weeks where he catches like 6-7 passes, 70 yards, and he gets a touchdown. Right. I mean, that's good numbers for a tight end.
Right. Nate, what do you expect out of your Miami Dolphins this year?
Well, I mean, if we're talking fantasy wise, their prospects don't look great.
No.
Tannehill's coming back, but the problem is
the knee.
Well, no, I don't think that's really the problem. His knee. He's never been a guy that's been fabulous, and it's not like this year he has. Well, he doesn't have Jarvis Landry, and they were throwing 110 passes a year to him.
But I do like Danny Amendola.
Amendola's okay. Devontae Parker is not very good. Mm-hmm. He's not.
No.
He's one of these guys that was so overhyped, and he gets hurt. He's hurt now. Mm-hmm.
I think Drake has potential.
Kenyon Drake is sharing time, probably going to share time with Frank Gore, because I think they want to give Frank Gore a decent amount of the work. Mm-hmm. Does he deserve it? It's hard to say, but I as far as Kenyon Drake's fantasy prospects, it's tough. Their line isn't that good, and Drake has the potential to give you maybe a game or 2 or 3 of 100 yards, and he can catch passes out of the backfield, which will help you in your point per reception league. But it's so tough to have him and draft him as any more than an RB2.
Okay.
He may be on the low end of an RB2, which would put him like 21, 22 among running backs. As far as pass catchers, I think Kenny Stills will probably finish the best. But I mean, Kenny Stills may finish the best, I'll say, in yards.
You don't know when Kenny Stills is going to strike.
Yeah.
I think the most reliable fantasy option in that Miami offense is Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
Then you go to Danny Amendola.
Well, I'd say Gesicki may finish.
Right.
I think he may finish as their. If you take the last half of the season, he may be their best pass catcher overall.
Yeah. Let's talk about defenses, Nate.
Okay. I mean, do you want to skip right to defenses? Do you want to touch on those kickers at all?
Well, I think we're gonna get kickers.
Well, I pose this question: What do you think is the best What do you think the most important thing is in drafting a kicker? I mean, it's not really the name so much. I think it's more of the team that they play on.
I think it's accuracy.
That is true too, but if you don't have the opportunities, then you just.
Yeah. I hate to be Homer again, guys. But Justin Tucker, best fantasy football kicker.
Well,
going today.
And the thing about Tucker is, it doesn't matter how good the Ravens are. He's consistently finished among the top 5 kickers.
He could probably narrow close to around, maybe a little less than 60, but he can, if needed, there's a good chance he's going to make it.
Yeah. And honestly, any kicker that you pick, it is the last pick of your draft.
Has to be, guys.
Do not pick. Don't try to one up anybody and pick Steven Gostowski in the 13th round of a 15-round league. Don't do it.
No.
You pick any other receiver or running back that you can think of before that.
And also look for a kicker in a dome.
I used to think this. I used to think this was important because of the elements. I don't think it creates any more of an advantage than anything else. I think it's more of the offense itself and the opportunities that team presents for their kicker. Okay. I mean, you look at a guy like Chris Boswell.
Yeah.
I mean, he's usually in the top 10.
Hey, good for Boswell getting a 4-year contract.
Yeah. Hey, he's definitely been a solid kicker for them for the last couple of years, so he definitely deserves it. I don't think it's really that hugely important to kick in a dome. I mean, you're not picking Phil Dawson,
right?
You're not gonna pick a guy like who else?
I think a good fantasy sleeper this year for kickers is Dan Bailey. Especially how the Cowboys.
Well, honestly, I don't know if you're necessarily picking a guy like Dan Bailey because of how. I don't think the Cowboys will be scoring that many points.
They're going to move the ball, but I think they're going to get in range for Dan Bailey range to kick a field goal.
I wouldn't. He's not a top 10 kicker. I know.
No, but he's going to have opportunities.
So, long story short, wait on a kicker. Wait until the last pick. Make sure that they're on a team that scores points.
Right.
I mean, some of the higher offenses probably going to be. I mean, you put the Rams up there. Maybe you put, I don't know. Maybe the Chiefs. I think it just depends on the offense and even like Minnesota could be.
Right.
And the thing is about these kickers, you don't know when one day they're gonna miss 2 kicks and they're gonna get cut. Like Kai Forbath just got cut. Now Daniel Carlson, who you may not have heard of, yes, he's the kicker for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
So that's a name to remember as a kicker that nobody may be thinking of, right, because he's the guy that has the job.
Right.
And he may not have the job in week 8, but he has the job in week 1, and that's all that matters right now if you're drafting. So that's all we're going to talk about with kickers. Let's just move on to what you want to move on to, team defense.
Let's do that.
So, team defense, what do you value as far as defense?
I think how many points the defense gives up. And if you get those turnovers and sacks, I think that is 3 things.
Do you think it's easier to predict a team defense, or do you just is it just one of those things that you kind of?
It's more roll the dice. No one saw Jacksonville had all the potential in the world, but no one knew they're going to be that good last year.
I don't think people were drafting Jacksonville in their league.
Yeah.
Nobody. Our league's so much different because of the salary cap that we play in. So yeah, and the availability of roster spots that some teams are drafting 2 defenses. And most leagues aren't going to do that. So a defense like Jacksonville probably. I mean, some leagues they were probably drafted, but not a majority of them.
But guys, if there's a run of defenses early in the round, don't be afraid to go against the grain and take. There's going to be better value in taking a defense that early because as a defense, you can always play the matchups.
Yeah, if we're drafting in a normal league that had very few roster slots, your last two picks should be defense
And a kicker.
then kicker. I mean, Jacksonville's probably going to be the number one defense in the preseason.
Yep.
It depends on, it depends on your scoring system. Some actually do consider total points, and Jacksonville doesn't really give up a lot of points.
Yeah.
So, you get an advantage there, but honestly, turnovers are hard to predict.
They are.
So, sacks, they may be a little bit easier to predict, but turnovers, you never know.
One defense I want to talk about,
And especially touchdowns. Forget that.
one defense I want to talk about that has so much potential. I hope they do well. Is Los Angeles Rams. They have all the talent in the world. They brought in Sue, and Talib, and Peters.
Yeah,
And they have
three head cases. But anyway.
And they have Wade Phillips there that can bring all those guys together. But I hope they don't get in their own way this year. Because that defense could be outstanding, but it could also be a time bomb waiting to happen.
Los Angeles Rams are trying to become the paper champions of the NFC.
Who was that? Vince Young said...
Vince Young thought the Eagles a couple of years ago were the dream team, and they were dreaming that they were the dream team because they were not.
But it turned out to be a nightmare for them.
Yes, it did. It did. Now, as far as the Rams are concerned, I do think that they are a top 5 defense right now.
Of course they are.
So, if you are looking for a defense, the Rams are probably on your board.
I think underrated defense is New Orleans Saints. I think they're coming. They have all the pieces. They're getting the pieces. They're coming out strong. I know it's disappointing for New Orleans last year.
I've never thought of New Orleans and defense in the same sentence.
But you have Lattimore there. You have what's a good defensive end, Nate? Well, never mind.
I'm drawing a blank.
But
It goes to show how much I care about the New Orleans Saints defense.
Right. I think another underrated defense is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I would say so. They're in the top 5 range, maybe a little bit outside, but they're draftable. They're a draftable defense. I think a defense that in past years that has been pretty much a lock, that is probably not a lock so much this year, is the Seattle Seahawks.
Obviously.
The Legion of Boom is no longer. So, yeah. And Earl Thomas is there, but he
doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be there, and he's not even in camp, and there were rumors about trading him. And Cam Chancellor retired. Richard Sherman is on the 49ers. Michael Bennett's on the Eagles. They lost a lot of players, so it's hard to say if you should even draft the Seahawks at this point as one of your defenses.
But when you're picking a defense, also look at the matchups. You can get by.
Yeah. Don't put a lot of thought into it, but you need a defense because most leagues require you to pick a defense. Right. So,
Nate, my final question for tonight: who's the one underrated guy you really want to share in fantasy football? Who's the one underrated guy that you want in fantasy football this year? You really want?
Out of everybody.
Everybody underrated.
Gosh. I don't really supremely think there's one guy that I want that's underrated. There's guys that I like, but I think in that it depends on the league itself. I mean, our league, since we do have a salary cap that's already set.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have guys that are underrated according to that league.
Sure.
So you have a guy that we mentioned earlier, Royce Freeman, who only costs $1 out of $1,000 budget. He'd be a good pick. He'd be a good pick if you think that he's going to be a guy that could be a second running back.
Right. A guy I like to have this year is Randall Cobb.
I thought you didn't like Randall Cobb.
I never said that.
You were saying all that stuff about Jimmy Graham.
Yes, but I believe in the Packers offense that much.
Well, apparently you do.
I do. And
their passing game especially. So you think Aaron Rodgers is going to throw like almost 40 touchdowns this year, I guess.
Aaron Rodgers could be the MVP this year in fantasy football and in real life.
If he stays healthy, which most years he does.
And that's the key for everyone, staying healthy.
Yeah, that is true. What is one out of... I'll make this turn. What is one guy that you just don't want any part of? In any position.
I'm going to say... Man, I'm going to give that question to you, and you let you
All
answer
right,
first.
since I already have an answer for you, I'm not picking Nelson Aguilar worth anything. Aguilar had a decent year last year, but every year prior to that, he couldn't catch a cold if he was standing in a snowstorm in North Dakota. So, and Aguilar's problem has been drops for his whole career, and one good year doesn't make a good player. If you're going to draft him, I guess he's okay, but don't draft him to be a starter. I don't even know if he's a flex player, which means he's outside of the wide receiver number 3. He right now, he could be in the wide receiver 4 range, but I just don't like Aguilar. I just think he's going to bust.
I ain't going to go with... I'm going to go with Golden Tate. I like Golden Tate, but I expect so much better out of him. But
you think that they're going to allocate the resources to other receivers? Is that
right,
what you're trying to say?
I also expect more of a run game. You know, he's in a contract year. He gets the yards, but he doesn't get the touchdowns.
I think Golden Tate has, in past years, been solid. I personally like Marvin Jones better, but you could do worse than Golden Tate. You could do worse than him. Stafford has shown that they like to throw the ball.
If I was forced to take him, that's fine, but I prefer not to have him. But you don't know what you're going to... It's hard to say.
Here's an update. The guy I thought would be a tight end number 4, Evan Ingram. Concussion, week to week. So you might want to hold off on trying to draft him as a sleeper.
Does that move Jimmy Graham up your list?
Well, he's not hurt. So I guess by default it does.
If you want a different guy, I will not touch yours. Trey Burton.
Yeah, I don't like Trey Burton at all. People are trying to make Trey Burton happen.
Nope.
And the problem is
he's talented.
Trey Burton signed a big contract. So they're going to want to give him as much work as they can.
Yeah.
I just don't think people think he's going to be top 10.
No.
Now, I saw a report from the Chicago Tribune that said pencil him in for 600 yards and approach the Bears' all-time tight end record for one season. I don't see it.
No.
They just have other players that I like better as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, if Allen Robinson's healthy, he's very good. Jordan Howard's not too bad. Tariq Cohen will catch a decent amount of passes.
Underrated guy.
Their rookie, Anthony Miller, can be pretty decent. I just think there's a lot on the table for Chicago, and also I don't think Mitchell Trubisky is that great of a quarterback. So you don't have a great quarterback, you're not going to get a lot of production.
Right.
So if you're thinking that Trey Burton is the sleeper and you got something going, I just don't think you do. I think he's right. I mean, right now you could draft him, but
be careful.
I think he's going to be one of those guys where you'll see him in the first 4 weeks, you'll dump him. He'll probably start to produce a little bit in maybe the middle of the year, and then you want to pick him back up, and then by that time he'll just regress, and it'll be a wasted season.
Nate, in closing, I'm going to leave everyone with this. Remember to set your lineups.
Yeah. Remember to set your lineups, and if all possible, like, don't auto draft, or if you're doing a live draft, like, actually show up. Mm-hmm. It helps everybody, and it helps for the league as far as like to build a camaraderie during the league. I mean, we have a better time for the drafts we do live than any like random league that we do.
And don't be afraid to take your player earlier than you want, because it's your fantasy football team.
Yeah, that is true. It's your team.
It's for fun, guys.
Yeah,
unless you're playing.
Unless you're playing for like $1,000, and if you are, more power to you.
I'd like to thank Nathan and the podcast for inviting me to the show.
Yeah, I mean, this was enjoyable. A lot longer than I expected, but, we had a lot to talk about.
So, hopefully you got something out of our fantasy football podcast to help you out with your year this year.
Maybe we'll do another one in the middle of the season to just kind of recap how bad we picked at the beginning of the year. Right. So, but anyway, if you want to follow us on social media, we have a Facebook page, the 546 Project. Our Twitter handle is _546_project. And our email is the 546project@gmail.com. And you can listen to us on iTunes and Google Play Music. And please give us a line and just what your fantasy football predictions are for this season. We'd love to hear them. And if you disagree with us, that's fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But anyway, I'd like to thank Matt for joining me on this program. And maybe we'll get you on an episode with the whole gang one day. But we'll see,
Thank you for the time.
All right. Until next time, we'll see you later.